Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast to help you find your inspiration. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for joining us. We have an excellent guest today. I am so thrilled we got to talk to her. Her name's Bahr, and she is fantastic. She's an actor, an author, a director, a comic. You've seen her on Hacks, Star Trek, Curb Your Enthusiasm. She's done a ton of stuff. She's really, really great and was phenomenal to talk to. I can't wait till you hear the conversation we have. A couple of things we talk about, though, is her festival that she runs, Neurotica Fest, and that is something you can submit to right now. Go to thereitispod.com and check out the festival blog that we've got up. And also her solo shows, and she's got one coming to Soho Playhouse March 18th through April 3rd called Stories from the Brink. And she also has a class that she is teaching about how to build your solo show with gold comedy. And we have a couple of links in the bio for you to check out so that you can sign up for her class. So much great stuff she's got going on. It was such a fun chat. Why don't we just get right to it? Here's my chat with Bahr. You're a fascinating person. I hope this is not an annoying thing to say.
No, please. Always open to ego building.
You're from the Bronx.
I am.
But you did live in Israel for a bit.
I lived in Tel Aviv. I lived in LA for a long time.
Right.
Came back to the city. Yeah.
Right.
Back and forth.
You went to Brown University.
I did.
You studied neuropsychology. And, you studied brains and in Stanford and Tel Aviv University, and then went into acting when you got out of school because you found that human behavior was the real science, the real, interesting.
Well, I mean, I think it's all, I think it, for the most part, to be perfectly honest, just the life of scientific research involves obviously a lot of data analysis, and
Right.
I love performing and creating, and there are people that are way more brilliant than I am that are super passionate about all aspects of the research. I just loved the fun stuff, which you really, I would phone in the other stuff, and then at some point I'm like, I'm really phoning it all in, so I'd like to go when you go to the operating room, when they're removing a tumor, or, they do certain tests where only half of the brain is numbed and you do testing. That was the stuff that interested me. And all the important stuff like crafting and studying and analysis, that was less. I'd be like, I have a Burger King callback I have to go to.
So you were pursuing acting and performance before college?
Yeah. The
or at least
research
at the
at
same time?
Stanford was just kind of, during my time at Brown, I spent, a few months at Stanford, and then I went to Tel Aviv University, and I did cancer research when I was studying for a year. So it was all part of my undergraduate. And then after I moved to LA, I was like, oh, instead of, I waited tables for a while. I'm like, no, let me go to the brain mapping center and do that. But, I was really, like I said, I'd phone it, I don't know if there's another euphemism for phoning it in because I keep overusing that, but
I know what you mean though, but yeah.
Half-ass, I guess, which is really not the proper term. And, Maya Bialik was there when I was there, but she was serious. And I think she was getting, her PhD or postdoc. And I was just research assisting and making jokes.
And you both eventually went on Big Bang Theory.
But I was fired. So there's the difference.
Oh, that part
I wasn't fired. I was replaced. Does that sound better? With two dudes. So it takes two dudes to replace me. That's how I see it.
That's the way to look at it.
That's the math.
So I thought, what an interesting thing to study in school and then go into acting, but it sounds like you were performing or interested in it before that.
Well, I did a little bit of acting at Brown, but I really did focus on neuroscience and psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you grow up wanting to do anything in the arts or engaging in it?
I love I don't really know. I think I never really I spent high school in Israel. I didn't really have any like extracurriculars. Like, now my son, he's scheduled up the wazoo. I didn't have that. Like, I'd go to school and then I'd hang out with my friends. Like, there wasn't, I did some piano. That was about it. But once I got to Brown and it kind of opened, the whole kind of world for me and I auditioned, I was like, oh, wow, I can do this for, not for a living. That remains to be seen. But, you can do it, you can pursue it. And then I think it was a very abrupt decision once I graduated to be like, you know what, I'm actually going to go to acting conservatory. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was very passionate, kind of impulsive gut
Yeah.
thing to decide upon.
So it's kind of a big swing to a certain
Yes.
degree.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, these days, I think that more than it used to be, people do many different things in life.
Mhm,
There's like things like the Sloan Fellowship, right, where the people are like combining science and arts, and
mhm.
you meet the real geniuses. Like you meet these amazing scientists that end up being brilliant violin players. So I
Yeah.
think that it's
Or
not like I'm a
engineers who
banker.
do improv comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're like an anesthesiologist and you're at UCB on the weekends. Hopefully not. I don't know if I would trust that anesthesiologist, but that's just me. But I think that, I don't want to say jack of all trades, master of none. I think that people can also excel in
Well,
different
yeah, and I also
disciplines.
hate the phrase "jack of all trades, master of
Yeah,
none" because it seems like being a jack of all trades is a mastery in itself.
I think so. I think you're right. I think what's the other term? There's another term. Not is it dilettante? But it's someone
Uh,
who's like, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome, but someone who, pretends to be
oh,
knowledgeable, I'm always putting myself, like minimizing my knowledge because really at the end of the day, we really know nothing. So
there's so much we don't know. And
yes, exactly.
the brain is a
We
pretty
know. Yeah. I mean, not even
vast.
this much.
Right, right.
Exactly. I just bought
It,
a coffee machine, so I'm enjoying, it's my
that's a
first
nice
coffee
cup.
machine ever. So I'm very
Really?
excited. Yeah.
Is it what kind of coffee
I
machine?
got the Nespresso one.
Yeah, yeah,
It was on sale, but my friend said to me, "You bought the wrong one," which is always what people will tell you after you purchase.
yeah.
And I'm not going to return it now. It's all, but
Yeah.
apparently it doesn't process the espresso like you're supposed to with that shot of hot water.
Ah.
Mine is a centrifuge. Maybe it's my science background that it excited me that it had a centrifuge, like a blood, like as if I'm, spinning blood. But it tastes good, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's all that really matters. We had an espresso machine as well, and it may be, I don't know if it had a centrifuge, but it may be the one that someone would say, "Hey, you got the wrong one." But hey, if George Clooney says it's okay.
We trust you. I'm always amazed at the celebrities that do ads. I don't know. I hope they give all that revenue to charity. I really have no idea why. What's the incentive for all these like billionaires to do a commercial shoot?
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, but we also just heard how, as sad as it was that James Vanderbeek was having to like do
Yeah.
charity to raise money for his health care.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
was like
That's
famous. So it's
insanity.
like,
I know.
is it that rough that people have to do commercials sometimes? Like, or are they just like,
I
hey,
know.
I wanna
Yeah.
buy this house, but I don't wanna have to use any of the money I already have. So
Well, I
I'm
think
gonna
it's
do this
so
commercial.
easy, once you make so much money, it's so easy to your standards change. So for me, like for someone who's $10,000 is like a dollar and
Yeah.
you end up overspending, just like someone who makes 50K a year can overspend. You
Yeah.
think no, but if you have millions or billions, but they spend accordingly, and if you're not responsible, you find yourself. I'm not talking about James Vanderbeek. Obviously, I have
Oh,
friends that
no,
have to
yeah.
deal with
Yeah.
crazy medical care and experimental and clinical
Mhm.
trials and private
Yeah.
thing, and it's
That
insane.
stuff's
I
so
mean, it's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, our healthcare system is totally thrown off. But yeah, what I've heard when it comes to like the super wealthy, that they could be the most concerned about losing it all.
right,
So I
right,
would that's kind of why I'm not too surprised,
yeah,
having heard that. I was like, yeah, I guess
yeah,
George Clooney sold his company for, I mean, he got $500 million,
yeah.
and when he sold Casamigos.
I don't, not
So
a tequila person. I wish I was, but I'm not.
yeah,
Not a big drinker in general.
yeah,
It's interesting. I was on the subway yesterday. I've noticed this many times. Someone unhoused came asking for money,
mhm,
and two people gave him money, and they were clearly, you could see, of very modest means. And those are the people that get, you know what I mean? It's so the generosity, just like people that spend can't manage their money. Sometimes if you have no money, you can be more generous than some, you know. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that a few times and I'm like, yeah, right on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Pretty
it's
much.
sad, but
Yeah.
that's the situation we're in.
Yeah. That's why we have to tax. We have to tax those wealthy
Tax
people.
the rich.
So
Anywho,
you go into acting and you like studied it. You're acting in things. You did a couple of video games, Star Trek video games, Star Trek
I
Voyager.
did. Yeah, it was my first gig was a Star Trek video game.
That's
Yeah. And then I
right.
did
Yeah.
actually the Star Trek the show. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. And then you get, like I mentioned, Big Bang Theory and Drew Carey show, and you're getting stuff. And then you eventually get a big part in the Larry the Cable Guy Health
Yeah.
Inspector movie. Big part.
Nominated for an Oscar.
But you had a part in this movie that was kind of his coming
Yeah, no, and
into
it was
his
a big part. I mean, it
own
was the
with
lead
that
with
movie.
him. It was great. It was great.
Yeah.
He's really a lovely guy.
He is. I mean, I know he gets,
Sweet.
yeah, I've never heard anyone say he's not a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and people I know have a lot to say about him sometimes, but it's like, is he a jerk though? No.
Yeah, he's genuinely sweet.
Then
And
let's maybe
yeah.
not hate on this guy so hard.
exactly.
He's not
And he's
a jerk.
also not a hateful comic. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? His comedy's not salty. It's
Right.
kind of, you know, it was like lovable. As far as I haven't seen, you know, I haven't seen his comedy recently. I don't know if anything's changed, but
Yeah, I doubt it.
he just was like a likable guy and doing silly stuff and talking about his grandma's farts. I mean, you know, just okay.
Yeah, it's
and
like
nice.
going to Cracker Barrel. You
Yeah,
know, it's just for the
They
comfort.
have Cracker Barrel in New York. I don't even know if that does that still exist.
It does. There's one in Jersey, apparently. I haven't been to
Oh.
that one, but
Never
it's like
been.
right
Never
over
been.
the-
Period. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm from the South, so I've been a bunch. And so, you know, for me, it's like there's something comforting about going there to get a Southern
like yeah,
breakfast
I hear
and
you.
dinner.
I hear you.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what he appeals to is like
Right.
the people who like that vibe. But you work at these things. When do you start also doing character work, like character
Yeah.
solo shows, and you'd written memoirs, and like there's all this stuff. How does
Jack
all
of
of
all
that come
trades,
into the
Jason, Jack
fold?
of all trades. Well, I think when I moved to LA, because in New York I was doing some theater and, you know, acting school and all that stuff. But when I moved to LA, I very quickly realized that I want to write my own work.
Yeah.
And I started doing stand-up. And I didn't, you know, I enjoyed the stand-up, but I always enjoyed character work. And I really wanted to just create a piece and play parts I would not play otherwise. Because it's you get typecast pretty quickly. I mean, even as a character actor, I'm not going to play an 80-year-old military general, right? And so that to me was the fun. And so I wrote my first show, Planet America. It was about the immigrant experience. And this is, you know, pre 9/11. The opening night was supposed to be on 9/11, and I obviously canceled. And this is pre-TSA, really. This was just, you know, it was with these characters going through immigration. It was based on my mom, who was always afraid they would take her green card away every time she came into the country. And finally they did. Like, it was, you know, so I kind of embodied different characters. And that was my first show. And I think I've done, 5 or 6 or I don't remember it, like shows since then. And it's my sweet spot. And I've really kind of attained a mastery of it, if I do say so myself, just in terms of also me helping other people develop their work. And I've been doing that for over 15 years, you know, helping people craft their work. And that kind of stemmed into a public speaking coaching business where I help people, but from a very kind of my own system of doing it, not the standard kind of inside out kind of public speaking. And so I go around and work people. So I love it. I mean, it is lonely. You know, I'd love to do a show with like a cast of 20. You know, and have that
doing
camaraderie.
a solo show, it's just you and then maybe the director is at
and
your
I usually
show,
direct
but-
my own work, so
Right,
it's, you
so
know,
there's that, and then
yeah.
And
I've been on tour. You know, I used to I tour a lot, and I've been touring with this, like my last show, Stories from the Brink. I don't know if you can see there it is, the poster there, which is coming to New York. I must mention, to Soho Playhouse. That's opening March 18th. So
is it part of the festival or is
No.
it out? Okay.
No, it's a 3-week run, like mid-March, March 18th through April 3rd. It's nice coming back to New York because I've kind of been all over with it. And I don't know where I was going with that. Once you start plugging,
it was like, how do you get
else,
into it? Yeah. And you mentioned there, you know, helping people develop their own shows, and you were teaching at Gold Comedy right now.
Yes, I love
show.
Gold. I love Lynn Harris. Yeah, so I've been teaching at Gold for a while now. I think I did a thing for Gold probably 4 years ago or a little more, where Lynn asked me to just talk to, aspiring comics. She had known my work from Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is kind of my, claim to fame.
Yeah, few episodes there playing some of that Larry got stuck on a
Yeah, the ski lift,
ski lift
exactly.
with, and
Yeah.
which I imagine your studies and your work, especially doing solo stuff where you're really thinking, you're really developing how a character thinks and behaves, was really good training for doing a show that doesn't truly have a script, because they sort of say like, this is what's going to happen, we're going to sort of
Yeah,
improvise.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everything is improvised. I mean, Larry crafts the storylines, and you also don't know what's happening in the rest of the episode. It's all very secret. So, the information is minimal. But yeah, I think that that's always what I've really enjoyed, is just jumping into another character and embodying another character, whether I'm writing it or improv. I had my series Svetlana. That was all, I wrote the
Right,
storylines,
yeah.
what was improvised. I played like a Russian madam. So that's really my sweet spot. I love, love, love doing that.
So you mentioned the solo shows, but also the memoirs you've written, because you traveled a lot.
I did travel a lot, and I still
You
travel a lot. I
toured a
think
lot.
travel makes me forget about our mortality. I think
Yeah.
that's really it. Like, I think that when I'm in movement, and when I was younger, it was definitely an escape and, a crutch or whatever you want to call it. My friends who are in AA or the program, there's a term they use called pulling a geographic, I guess, where you think you move somewhere else and things will change or shift. And I talk about that in my current show, in Stories from the Brink. That's kind of a theme of the show, that when I was younger and kind of running away from certain things and fears of connection, when you keep moving and renewing, there's no real fear of abandonment, because you're the one who's abandoning, right? You're moving. But that being said, I'm also extremely curious about the world and have this kind of like, oh, carpe diem, let's keep going and see as much as we can. And so I traveled when I was 19. Yeah, I backpacked through Asia for 6 months. And then when I was at Brown, I took a summer off and backpacked through South America. And
Wow.
I'm not a big hiker. So when I say backpack, it's not as rugged as one would think. I do talk about the crazy adventures that did happen in my show. I mean, spoiler alert, I went on a whitewater rafting trip, and the group before us, the guide, drowned. The guide.
God.
So I talk about that, but I do it all with humor, because that's what we do. And, that's how
Yeah.
cope with a lot of, traumatic experiences in a fun way. And I always teach my students it can't feel like a therapy session, like whatever your shows, because a lot of people come to me with, trauma or some life experiences that are challenging. They want to write about it. I go, yes, but it cannot feel like we're your therapist, or it can't be self-indulgent. It has to entertain, and you have to be okay. Nobody can feel like you're still not okay, because then people want to take care of you, and then you can't enjoy the show. So
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that
And at the end of the day, you're trying to, there's like, if it's comedy, you're trying to get people to laugh. And they're
yes,
not going to
and they
laugh
have to feel
and say,
comfortable. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
and even when you're emotional or you're going through a tough period, that we still have to know you're okay. I think that's why certain performances, even when you're seeing someone completely break down, you can enjoy it and it resonates, but that they're okay. When you watch a movie where that Bjork was on the verge of, like, when she did like a Lars von Trier film and she's breaking down, it's distract. You can feel it, right? You
Yeah.
can sense that something is so dark that it's not, it's too real in a way, right? You have
No,
to be
I get
real, but
that.
it's too real.
Yeah, I know it's a Marvel movie, but with the Black Panther sequel, because it
Right.
was after Chadwick Boseman died.
Yes.
I mean, it really just felt like grief, like
Yeah.
true, real grief, not like the way it usually feels in a movie when the character died, but the actor didn't. I mean, it was kind of heavy, and I was sort of like, I don't know if I can watch that again, because you feel the pain of their grief.
Right. It's interesting, because when we talk about like grief porn, right? Like, what's the movie now? Hamnet, which is, did you see Hamnet?
I have not.
Okay. I was dreading seeing it, just because I was like, oh, I dealt with a lot of loss, and my brother passed away, and I'm dealing with my mom. I talk about all this stuff. And I'm like, do I really want to? But then I was like, no, hunker down. And again, that's one of the examples of a great performance where you're sobbing your eyes out, but it can feel cathartic in a way, as opposed to draining, where you're like, and that's why we go see art, right? That's why we go see theater.
Absolutely. I was watching The Pit last night, and something happened that brought tears to my eyes.
Oh yeah, I did too. I cried. I cry all the time in The Pit. I turn it on and I'm like, I'm sobbing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I watched the rest of it this morning at like 7 a.m. I watched the end of the episode, and I'm like, oh,
It was that end. It was that end.
yeah, you're right.
hit me hard. I was like, oh my God, that's like not a real person, you know?
I know. Isn't that amazing though? I think about that all the time of how when you really are watching and engaging, the brain doesn't distinguish, between real life or this empathy that you feel. And that's, that's again, when you're a good actor, when you're trained, that empathy, that connection that you fuse with the character.
Right.
And you empathize, but you feel like I am that person without there being a psychotic break, of course. But I think that people that are immersed in certain characters for a long time, that also happens. Like you start, so I think the brain doesn't distinguish between like, oh, am I on a roller coaster for real or am I watching this VR, right?
Right.
So to have that, but know you're safe in the comfort of your sofa, that's kind of that's the process that happens.
Absolutely. Like get people's guards down so they could feel something. But you're right. You're absolutely right that it's distracting if the audience is like, are they okay?
Right.
And it can't really, every time someone performs, it can't feel like they're bearing their soul for the first time and have not processed it.
Exactly.
And also, you're not going to get the best work. It's not going to be the best show if it has not been processed.
Right.
I imagine.
And I think sometimes I do work. I fill this capacity as a therapist sometimes when I'm developing work intensely with artists because we do process it together. But then that's where I come in to kind of help them craft it or say we're entering the land of self-indulgence or we need to pull back here. We need to unpack this more or this is too much. You need to kind of figure this out emotionally or sometimes you need to hold back, because sometimes, again, you can feel it erupting, but that's when you're trained, that's the kind of that gauge that you kind of play with. And how much am I going to release? I think that after my show before this show was called See You Tomorrow. Oh, look, another one, another poster. I put them up 3 seconds before this because I wasn't sure we were on video. Like literally, like, let me put my posters up.
Oh, I guess I have my there it is thing there.
Yeah, I'm not a narcissist. I mean, maybe, but I don't have myself plastered all over.
No, it makes sense
I'll do
to
it
have
like
your own posters up in
here. In the bathroom, like tongue in cheek. There's my Oscar, right? It's on the toilet. Okay. When I hear that, I'm like, really, guys? Come on. But full disclosure, like, so my mom had a stroke while she was talking to me on video. This happened during the pandemic, and we were 6,000 miles apart. And it was harrowing. Obviously, I'm trying to get an ambulance to her. I'm in LA. She's like, and then I go to take care of her, and the stroke causes vascular dementia, which is instant dementia, right? So she was lucid, and then she's gone. And I was a sole caregiver. She had no siblings. I had no siblings. So it was very emotional and exhausting and draining. And I was supposed to host a theater festival in Vancouver and they wanted me to do comedy. And I said, that's fine, but can I actually, and this was my first show that wasn't fiction. So I said, can I actually write a piece about this journey with my mom and caregiving? And it was still very raw. And initially when you write something that's so raw, it does create a distance and it does help process because it's like you're putting it to paper. You're crafting it. So there's something that happens with the information that doesn't feel as over. You're not drowning in it. You're like, you're scooping out water out of the boat, but sometimes But that being said, performing it was extremely draining because I was present and at times you could feel the emotions bubble over. And the success in reining that in sometimes is mixed because it's so raw. Because it's like some nights, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh God, but never to the point where I can't speak, but I really feel it. And I'm like, Reese, you got to pull back or the audience is going to, you know what I mean? And then after doing it for a long time and, and some nights, it's interesting also, some nights the audience would be laughing from the get-go because it's also very funny because who wants to watch a show about dementia? Nobody. Nobody. Yeah. So I was like, let me, and I cope through humor. So I bring a lot of humor to all the situations and even the most darkest stuff. I hope that that's what I do with all my work, right? So you're laughing and crying, but some nights the audience would be quiet because I don't know if they knew they could laugh or they had their own. It was bringing up their own stuff. And it was torture to do the shows on those nights and those are the nights, of course, my agents come. That's always the case, right? Like you're like people that are coming. And it's like an hour feels like, good Lord. And then other nights from the first minute, they're laughing with me and they're laughing and crying. And then it's like you're floating on the water, right? You're going in and out. And that's the joy of live theater, right? So you're going to have different crowds. And even the people that were very serious, it was still very meaningful to them. It wasn't, torturous. It was very, very meaningful for them. And they would come up to me and I end up being like, there's that guru in India that hugs people for 20 hours a day. Do you know who I'm talking about? She's
No.
very famous. She's like a woman. I don't know where she lives. Maybe she lives in Mumbai, but all she does is hug people. They line up by the thousands, and she gives them apparently a very powerful hug, which I think is underutilized in our culture.
Mhm.
Like just
Yeah.
hugging strangers, just this unconditional kind of love that comes in. So I would, after the show, people would come hug me and tell me their story. Everybody's got a story about caregiving. I mean, almost everybody.
Yeah.
And then I would cry, and then I'd be like, oh, and it was like a sob fest. And after a while, I'm like, I cannot tour this show anymore. It's been 2 years. I think I'm
Yeah.
good. You know what I mean? Because it was just like, it was just so much living in this 1,000% emotion all the time.
Hmm.
And so this show that I'm doing now, Stories from the Brink, it's more of a ride, and it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun, crazy stuff and youth stuff, and there's some emotional stuff, but it dances on it in a different way. So it's not,
Yeah.
grief porn, torture porn, whatever you want to call it.
With doing shows or writing books, writing any material, obviously if it's a fiction novel and you're using your life, then that's probably a little
Right.
easier. But
Yeah.
when it's here's something that actually happened to me and you are like naming yourself and you're pointing out all the stuff that happened and it's tragic stuff. I think even when it's not tragic, but it could just be a little maybe gossipy or something, like if you're at a mean parent who did, and
Right.
you're
Right.
you're talking
Yeah.
about that. For me personally, when I was doing stand up, I knew there were a lot of comics who did stand up on that kind of material, but I could never get there where I could be like, so and so did this one time and that was messed up,
Right.
or
Right. Right. Right.
this was a tough experience for me. It was always like the easy thing to talk about, like, oh, I just got broken up with, like that sort of stuff.
Right. Right.
But how do you write about these tough things and just feel open enough to share it publicly?
Well, I think that, I mean, there's two parts to that question. So, obviously, when you're doing character work, you can hide behind the character. Your vulnerabilities can come through
Sure.
the character. In my memoirs, it was easier only because when you're writing on your laptop, you almost forget that people were going to read, and sometimes people don't read. But you know what I mean? When suddenly it's published, and so I would kind of bear all. But I've always been very open about my flaws, my vulnerabilities in my art. It's almost like whatever your inefficacy in your personal life, I would bear all in my art. And people would come. It's interesting you said that, because this last show, I talk a lot about my issues, but in a fun way. And then everyone's like, oh, you're so brave. And I'm like, I don't see it that way. Maybe because I also see it, well, like that's the point. Like that's why we're doing art. The artist, that's your job.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like
Hmm.
that's your job, to share things that will resonate with people so they don't feel as alone, or it speaks to them, or maybe they feel better about themselves because they're more put together. Who knows? But I think that's the job. And if you're not doing that, I'm not saying it has to be self-deprecating, but you have to be vulnerable.
Hmm.
And again, with humor, yeah, I think that, certain people judge stand-up comedy differently. I remember reading once that usually beginner comics do self-deprecating humor more. I don't know what that means. I don't know why, like it's the easier thing to do. Like I look like this or I look like that, but I don't
Right.
know I don't know what those rules are. I don't think that's true. I think you have comics that are veterans that
Yeah.
like, so I don't know. I feel like, and there's something very powerful about observational comedy. And
Hmm.
a lot of times people go into the world of false premises, which is also kind of tricky in stand up, which can take you
Yeah.
out of it. Right. And
Right.
I
Right.
see that a lot. Right. Like I slept with four guys. Well, in this case, it was true. No, but like it's just, it's so again, if it feels inauthentic, you're going to lose the audience. But when it's authentic, it's gold. Right.
Yeah.
So again, as
Absolutely.
long as it's not looking for validation from the audience, or it doesn't come from that need. It comes from
Mm.
like what I've learned from my shit. Here it is. Let's make it entertaining. Or
Hmm.
I'm not writing a
Hmm.
self-help book. Many people do, but I didn't. So the memoirs, it was easy. With this show, I'm really standing there. So when you're physically standing there talking about how damaged you were or are or whatever, yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just I think that's the easier part for me, but everybody has their challenge. Now, the second part of your question is, when do you talk about other people? So
Yeah.
I make fun of my ex in this scenario. You know what I mean? I talk about a situation. He hasn't seen the show. I told him one joke I make a joke about, stuff about my parents. I mentioned a little bit, but not too much, just because they see my shows and I don't, well, my mom doesn't at this point she has dementia, so it doesn't really matter. But my dad hasn't seen this last show. I don't really talk about him too much. I talk about my brother passing, and it was very painful for him. So I said, you know what? Skip the show. He's seen all my work. But people that were really abused by their parents or, things they want to talk about, I always ask the artists I work with the ramifications to you performing and how important is it to you? And if you're of the mind of going, this is my art, my parents know that, my family, like they know that this is what I do and my family's going to be part of it. But I never talk about like naming, I don't name people, but obviously parents, you kind of know who they are.
Right.
And so everybody has to make that decision. I'm working with a woman now developing her show. And she was torn about talking about her kids because her kids are dealing, with issues and things. And we kept going back and forth on it. And finally I said, then don't include it. There's enough in your life. And it's also, she's like, I don't think it's my right to disclose things about my kids' lives. Like, I don't think that's up to me. So, but I think it has to be a conversation. And I had another artist who talked about discovering that her father was a sperm donor. Like, the dad who raised her is not her biological father, and she sought him out, and they really connected. And she was nervous about talking about it too much in the show. So I said, you have to do your own reckoning, and it's okay to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to.
If you're not comfortable with it, then you don't have to do it.
Yeah. And
So
if you
that's
want,
advice
if it's really,
I got once. But
right, if it's really imperative to your show, but I never have that fuck it attitude. Even someone who really wronged you, that's up to you, right? I mean, but just know that there are consequences, and if your family relationships are important to you, will that force a conversation? Sometimes some of the artists I work with, they end up having a conversation they hadn't had with their parents in 30 years. So great. You're finally opening it up, and you don't have to ask for the blessing, but you can inform them or be respectful to, Yeah. So I think everyone has to kind of, I don't think it's a given, but if people want to do it, that's also okay. But I also say, if you're going to do it and not give a fuck, then know that there will be people affected. So,
good advice.
Be cognizant of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've mentioned, and you've mentioned you've written some memoirs. You start doing stuff with the New Yorker, but you also have the book Dork Whore. I keep wanting to say Dark Whore.
No, everybody thinks like dark horse. I'm like, no, it's dork and whore, like a prostitute. Yes.
Is that being developed into a film?
It's in development, but in the world of film, it can be in development for decades. But yes, there is a script, and there's also a script for my second book called Machu My Picchu, which is also about my time at Brown and traveling through South America. So yes, those are both written, and working with producers, and it's as everyone says, it's a tough time in the film world.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's like it's a weird time too, because it's to a certain degree, it feels like someone with today's technology can get anything that's in their head out there,
right?
But it's just the getting it produced and distributed. That's maybe the tougher part at this point. Or
well, I think the landscape, there's no excuse anymore to not create. You can put anything anywhere, right? Social, YouTube, whatever, right? You have iPhones, you can edit it. Like you really are one-stop shop. But that being said, it's getting increasingly frustrating to be seen because it's such the Wild West, right?
Yeah.
I was on Mark Maron's podcast when he first started, and there was nobody in the landscape. Yeah. So, he called me up and goes, can you do, you know what I mean? And he was just starting. It was like, and getting some guests in and talking. And I used to do stuff on his radio show, and it was a different time. And now you launch a podcast or three, you do as well. Like it's, how do you get the listenership? How do you stand out? Everybody has it. You know what I mean? So
all these famous people have one now.
Yeah. And it's again, and they get famous people. And I remember when I did my first, I've had a couple of podcasts over the years, and most of all, I enjoy it.
X-Ray.
I had X-Ray, which I had a lot of big guests. And the big guest didn't necessarily mean listenership.
Yeah.
So it's like at one point you're like, so what am I supposed to do? How do I break through? Like it's endless. And then I did another one, and I finally said, you know what, I'm going to take a break. Now I'm launching again. I'm going to start launching another podcast with, So I'm collaborating with two different people on two different concepts.
Okay. What are the concepts? Can you share those yet?
I can share. One is about religion. And I have a friend who's a devout Catholic,
Mhm.
and we engage in many a banter. So we're talking about kind of launching those discussions. And
Mhm.
as someone who's Jewish, and I call myself like the fluctuator, because I fluctuate from belief to complete skepticism to
Mhm.
it's not consistent with me, and it comes in moments, or there's an overall feeling that something's out, whatever, agnostic. You can call it, whatever you want. But I'm always fascinated by people with devout belief and how that serves them so well in coping with the world and coping with
Right.
tragedy. There was a tragedy in Israel, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, where this woman, two babies died in a daycare from like gas leak, or I don't know what the thing was, right? Like very like 3 month old or 4 month old, two. Two? I think it was two. It was one? It might have been two. I'm sorry. I don't recall the details. It was so harrowing to me that I was like, And the woman, it was a religious community, like a devout community. In Israel, the religious communities are very segregated they're in their own world. Like there's not a lot of interaction. They're living in a very strict bubble. And one of the women came to the court to defend the daycare worker because they were arrested. The daycare workers were arrested, right? And she came to defend. And this is a woman who lost her child 2 days earlier. And she comes in, and I have no idea of obviously the insane grief that she had been feeling, not on camera, but she just said, well, this was his time. This is when God wanted him. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm listening to this, and I'm like, I want to bang my head in a wall. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, what a way to move through the world, right? Where no matter what happens, you are like, I'm humble enough to not know why, but there is a reason. Because again, I think that the thing we all struggle with is that futility of tragedy, right? Like, why does this person have to suffer? Why does someone
Right.
have to go through so much loss or pain? You watch The Pit, right? You have
Right.
that story, like all you're seeing is illness, and it's interesting why we watch it, right? Like, what
Mhm.
does that
Mhm.
give us watching
Right.
that work? It's like,
Yeah.
what is that? So anyway, that's kind of what the podcast also addresses. And
Interesting.
how our brain, I remember interviewing a neuroscientist, a friend of mine, who said there's a part in our brain that when stimulated, you feel like someone's watching over you. It's like literally, as soon as you stimulate certain parts, and
Mhm.
that part is like someone's watching it. And so we've evolved in a way, to need that or feel that or have this sensation. Or again, that's if you're skeptical. If you're not, you're like, no, that's God
Mhm.
in our brain, whatever. So anyway, I find this stuff all fascinating.
It is fascinating. We'll be on the lookout for that podcast. You mentioned that you did Curb Your Enthusiasm. You also wrote a book with JB Smoove,
Yes.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, the Book of Leon.
Yeah, it's as his character. It's in his character. Yeah.
Right. How did that come about?
I think my book agent had connected us, and we just started writing, and I loved writing in his character, and JB's awesome. And
Yeah.
he's so funny in that show. He's so brilliant in that show.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's great. And always a surprise. He always ends up
You
doing
never know.
something.
I
It's
mean,
like, I did not
yeah,
anticipate him doing this right
stuff
now.
that just bursts out of his mouth spontaneously are always astounding, right?
Yeah. That's excellent. Yeah. And that came out how many years ago was that?
That's a while ago. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a minute,
I know
6 or
that was
7 years ago. I
yeah,
feel
that's
like
what I was thinking,
that's
like
been a while.
2019-ish or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's been a while. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So you're teaching people how to do the sort of work you've done. You have this extensive work you've done. You've also started a festival called the
Yes.
Neurotica.
Neurotica Fest, correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
Neurotica Fest. It takes place September 10th through the 13th. I just opened the calls for submissions. So
Is it primarily comedy or is it?
no, it runs the gamut. So it's our second year, and it takes place over a course of 3 or 4 days at Under St. Mark's, which is a great little theater. It's kind of an institution. It's been around forever, and it's solo performances. A lot of times, people that work with me, you know what I mean, and they'll end up submitting and showcasing their work at the festival. Sometimes it can be a work in progress. I encourage people to get to a place where they really feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Kind of, they have a good piece of work to show. But we also had book readings. Last year, we had Susan Morrison talking about her book about Lorne Michaels, which was fantastic.
I have that in my very large stack of books to finish
Oh, it's great.
or
It's a
even
great
get
book.
to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we had a film. We had some like Buffon. I had people from, Canada come in and all over the country. And so, looking to kind of spread the submission a little wider. And
Okay,
and
yeah,
see
I'll
what
do that.
comes. So yes, I encourage people to submit, and then I meet with them or on Zoom or in person to talk about the work, especially if I like to see a video of the full work, but if they don't have one, I kind of it's really
Yeah,
about showcasing, voices that also a lot of them it's their New York premiere, which I love, and
yeah,
it's kind of a nurturing community because theater can be cliquey, small group of people. So it's nice to open it up and like foster a community for people that this is like, you know,
yeah.
schlepping from all over. I had people coming from California and Alabama and, all over.
And how long have you been running that fest?
It's our second year. I started it last year and I'm doing the second year. And I
Awesome.
was shooting a TV series in New Mexico for 4 months last year called Joseph of Egypt, and I couldn't be here for the festival I was shooting. And I was like, I can't be there for my own festival. So this is why technology is amazing. I did all the tech remotely because you can we live stream all our shows too. There's like a setup in the theater. So I was designing lights and doing tech from New Mexico. And then I would watch the shows because a lot of times a lot of the artists come to me to direct their pieces. And so I would direct them remotely and I would watch. And then I did the Q&A for Susan Morrison remotely. Like it was all, so at least we have that technology, right?
I mean, it's a wild world we live in now. Like as we
Yes.
were saying before, there's no excuse for not putting something up, and it could because of this wild world of tech that we live in. We can put things up. I actually just had a situation yesterday. I had pitched improvised Law and Order to the artistic director at my theater, the Magnet. And then he was like, "Oh, I think a show is just now going on of that at BCC." And it literally like 5 days ago, they had their first show. I've had this
Oh,
idea for like 4 years, and I just didn't
yes.
put the pedal to the metal on it because I was like, pitched it to the team that I
Yeah.
was on at the time that was retiring and was like, here's a show we can do at the theater. And no one really bit. And so I just sort of put it on the back burner. And now, just
Yes.
like we learned in Big Magic, your ideas can come to you, but if you don't do anything with them, those
Yeah.
ideas will go to someone else.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's like the collective, I had written scripts. I had written a script that was out and I was talking to a financier and everybody loved this script. And then she says she was at Sundance and she calls me from Sundance. She goes, I just saw your movie and it sold for like $20 million. It was the Jesse Eisenberg movie, the
Oh,
one where they go to the camp. I had written literally that
yes.
movie, and that's
Yeah.
after I worked for
With
2 years on
Culkin.
a
Yeah.
script.
Right.
So, again, years ago, I was doing stand up at the Improv in LA, and I had a big agent and an actor, well, shall remain nameless, but a very, 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 very famous comedian, stole my joke.
Mm.
It was so close to my phrasing that's how I knew. I don't just throw stuff out there, right? Maybe, and sometimes people don't do it consciously, right? Like people
Sure.
hear something and they think the idea comes to them. Like you never know where it comes from. So I don't
Right.
use the word steal lightly. I've had other people steal work, but like this was not. And I go to my agent. I was horrified. I'm like, I can't believe that he stole my bit. And my agent goes, if your act revolves around one bit, you might as well quit now.
I've heard of Pat Oswalt say that. Yeah.
I've learned how to let it go, right? Because I have people going, I don't want to tell anybody my idea. And I've had stuff happen. Like, again, I put stuff out there and others, like, I've sent scripts out. Like, you can't live like that because it's like
Yeah.
maybe somebody actually will steal an idea or a script, but okay, move on.
Yeah.
Move on. Like, don't dwell on it. Write something else.
Right.
That's,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think
I
I
mean,
had
it was
other
funny
ideas
because
as
I had
well,
one
so.
joke really stolen from me, and this was one of my favorite jokes. And then I actually went up to the comic, and I didn't do it accusatory because we were on the same show together.
Yeah.
And he did the joke before my set. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, now it sounds like I'm taking from him. This is a bit I've been doing for years. This is one of my like oldies but goldies. And he's like, oh, I did? He goes, okay, I won't do it anymore. And I'm like, okay. I just was like, cool, dude. I think that, hopefully that's the case. I hope.
No,
So
I
sometimes
think
it can get frustrating. It is like,
I've never gone on stage, but there was a joke. I was like sitting in my apartment once and a joke came to mind. It's jokes do, like something just random pops in your head.
yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, this is a funny thing I could riff on. Maybe I could make this a joke. And then after riffing on it in my mind for a couple minutes, I was like, wait, I think I've heard this. And somehow my brain figured it out kind of quick. It was like, text this guy. Does he have this joke? And I had texted and was like, hey, do you have a joke about this subject? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, Okay, good. Yeah, it was a good bit. And I was like, yeah, I am so glad it happened that way. But if for whatever because it just was a joke I heard and was a little
Right,
in one ear out the other. And that's how it could
right,
just get
right, right.
filed in the back of your brain and you don't remember front of brain wise, like
Yes. Yeah.
consciously when it pops up and something you're watching on television triggers a thought and you hadn't compartmentalized it as fully as, oh yeah, I saw this thing, like you weren't as present when you heard it, like, so we could
Yeah.
easily go on stage with that, but when it's like
Yeah.
word for word, it's like that's
Exactly. When I heard
intentional.
the phrasing, I was like, or it's so specific, you're like, the odds of you really, and this was like very specific and very, and I was like, come on, dude. So you hope, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
no.
yeah.
Oof. Well, I'm sorry that sort of stuff has happened, but you're right. And I have heard Patton Oswalt say, you know, if someone stole a joke, just write new jokes,
Yeah.
like, because
I mean, look, it's frustrating, but it's like a
it's
boyfriend,
frustrating, but
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna stop doing that joke at some point
Right.
and start
Yeah.
doing new
Or
jokes.
yeah, but any one time someone you feel violated in any way, it's
Absolutely.
frustrating,
Well, and
you
then
know?
he did years later, somebody, it went viral. I don't know if you heard about this. This was like 10-ish years ago, maybe
No.
longer, where a guy was doing a charity show and he wasn't really a stand-up and he just did a
Other people's
whole
jokes?
set of Patton Oswalt jokes
That's
from like
horrible.
specials.
I feel like I
And
heard that. Did I hear about that? I might have heard
it
about
may
that.
have because it was, kind of before there was a bunch of viral content and
Yeah,
this
yeah,
went
yeah, yeah,
viral.
yeah.
And Patton Oswalt, because there's video of it and people put it online. And Patton Oswalt was like, yeah, I did believe at one point just write new jokes, but it feels pretty weird when someone actually does steal your joke. Like this felt like a violation.
Yes.
So,
Oh,
it feels
man.
weird when it happens. I've had people steal jokes and I'm like, what? Do
Yeah,
they not
yeah.
realize I'm standing right here? Hey,
I always try and give people the benefit of the doubt
sure.
just because it feels nicer, but you're right, some people are just like, if you really have to steal material, what are you doing? But again, you
Yeah.
have, the legendary, brilliant Robin Williams, right? Had a
Yeah.
reputation, but I think it was really pure genius, right? Like he would
He
just hear
just
stuff, absorb like a sponge, and then spew it
not
out.
know where
So,
it came from.
but I'd
And
still
plus,
be
of course,
frustrated if I was on stage and then Robin
sure.
Williams goes on after me and takes a bit and makes it better.
Right. Yeah. No, that would be frustrating for sure. That's why he would just like pay them. He would just write them a check when that
Oh,
happened.
did he? Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
When
Just
people would
buy your
say like,
troubles
"Hey,
away.
that's my joke," he would just go, "Sorry, I don't. I didn't remember here."
That's funny. I don't
And
even
then also
remember.
we know like I guess he also did have some. He had a dementia, a certain kind. Was it or
Did he?
maybe not dementia, but he had
He
something
had
going on
something
that
going
maybe
on. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe affected how his brain processed
I
stuff.
don't know. Who knows?
Who
But,
knows? Who
people
knows?
that get away with stuff that other people don't. So,
That's for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Well,
It's
I'm starting up a new cohort at Gold to build your solo show. I'm starting it up. I think it's like March 6th, I think. If
okay.
people go to the Gold website or they go to my website, actually, I think there's a link there, which is just irisbar.com, which is Iris, right? Iris, not Iris. IRISBAHR.com. There's a link to all that stuff.
Yeah, people should definitely check that out. And it's been great talking to you. We're at the end of the
You
episode.
too.
Let's create something together.
Yeah.
So you have gotten so much material out there that is from your life. What would you say is the first step in trying to develop something if someone else would like to do that one day? Because I personally, even though I've written stand up, I wouldn't necessarily know where to begin if I were, and of course you're teaching a class on this, so I'm not asking for
Right.
you to give the whole thing, but what do people need to look for to sort of think like, oh, this could be a show?
Well, I think obviously something that was profound in their life. You can start there, a profound experience.
Hmm.
I always tell people it doesn't have to be a big story. A good storyteller can talk about walking their dog and make it interesting, and a bad
Yeah.
storyteller can talk about climbing Kilimanjaro and make it boring, right? I really think it's not so much about, obviously, if big things happened in your life, you're going to have, a little more of a compelling reason to draw people in, right? If
Yeah.
something is not standard. But sometimes the most standard is what's appealing, but what's your take on it? I think that that's, finding your perspective and personal insight into something, or a specific lens is really where you should start. And something that will be fun for you to share. It still has to be fun. Even if it's hard, it has to be enjoyable to write about it, to work on it, and to present it, especially if you're going to do it night after night. You can't, if you hate talking about something, then don't write about it. Or, write about it, but don't present it as something that we can ingest as entertainment. So I think start there. I think that usually people that want to write a show, either they love performing and have no idea what to write about, which then we kind of have to dig, and that can involve a few sessions of digging into different things that will kind of spark their joy, to quote Marie Kondo. But other people that come, they usually have this thing they've been wanting to talk about for a long time, right? Or I have to. So they come to me with that, and then we can craft it. And sometimes it's not the right format. I had a woman come to me who wanted to write a one-person show about her cousin who OD'd. And I said to her, first I said, well, this sounds like a two-hander. Doesn't sound like a solo show, just from kind of what she was telling me. And then I said, nope, it actually sounds like a film. And she ended up writing it and making it as a short film. So, and I ended up developing that with her instead, because sometimes theater or one-person show isn't the best format for this specific story that you want to tell. And so it's also about exploring. I tell people, write this as a memoir, write this as a novella. There's so many artistic modalities that's not always the best way or best form of expression for that particular episode in your life, so to speak, or whatever you want to be talking about.
Excellent. There it is. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
What a great chat. She was awesome. And be sure to see her show, Stories from the Brink, coming to Soho Playhouse March 18th through April 3rd. You can get tickets on irisbahr.com or the Soho Playhouse website. We have a link in the bio to her website. Also, check out her Build Your Solo show class with Gold Comedy. We have a couple of links in the bio for that. And you can follow her on Instagram at iris.bahr, and that's IRISBAHR. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at There It Is Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at There It Is, and follow me on Instagram and Threads at Jason Farr Pics. Also subscribe to our comedy lifestyle newsletter and support us if you can. We have a Patreon and a PayPal. Go to thereitispod.com for newsletter and support info. Links in bio. Until next time, be good to each other. It's a moral imperative.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.